Hello world! Today we'll talk about the C++ keyword inline. But before talking about the keyword inline, let's talk about the word inline. So what does it mean to inline something? Well, let's define a variable here. And then let's use the variable. Now, if you have a good IDE, there will be at least one inline option there. Let's take a look at this. Wow, my variable disappeared. It was inlined by the IDE. It was removed from our code and its value of 6 was substituted for every mention of the variable I. Now, we can also inline a function. And by the way, you're not the only one that can inline something. Your compiler can also inline it for you. Let's go to the Compiler Explorer and check that. Even at optimization level OG, the compiler already inlines this variable for us. What about functions? Well, this function isn't inlined on OG, of course, but it's inlined on O1. Okay, so what does the keyword inline actually means? Well, initially it was meant as a hint to the compiler. So the programmer would write an inline function, and that's a hint to the compiler. What we're saying here is, compiler, please inline this for me. Now I can write clean code with small functions, and I don't need to be concerned with the overhead of calling functions, because I can say, compiler, please inline this for me. But the compiler is not obligated to inline this for you, because we're saying, compiler, inline this for me, but the compiler can say,
no, I will not inline this for you. But I will inline that other function that's not marked as inline. Inline is just a hint. It is time for the machines to rise.
Actually, most, if not all, C++ standard implementations ignore the keyword inline for the purpose of actually inlining. So that's it, right? The keyword inline doesn't do anything. You don't need to use it. Bye, world.
Wait. The use of the keyword inline implies some other things that I cannot ignore.
Oh, right. Okay, so let's think about this. Suppose we have two translation units, and for our purposes here, a translation unit is the same as a CPP file. And suppose I define a function in one of those CPP files and use it in another. Of course, this will never compile because this file has no idea that this function even exists. So normally, if we had any sanity left, we would write a header file declaring the function. Yes, that's the standard procedure. But I don't want to have 3 files open here, so I will just simulate a header. Since an include is basically glorified copy-paste, I will just write the code twice, and you imagine that that's in the header and I'm including. Great, now it works. The only problem is the compiler can never inline that function. Why? Well, one of the files has the definition, so the compiler can optimize everything there, but then the other file is calling the function, but it doesn't know the definition, so it cannot inline it. The compiler will compile one file and then the other file, and we don't know the order, maybe it's in parallel, and then it will link them together. So to fix our problem, we actually needed to have the definition in the two files. And that will mean basically putting the definition on the header. But if we put the definition on the header, the compiler will complain, right? It will say there are two definitions now. So what can we do? Well, that's the main thing that the keyword inline is used for. You see? So since I want to give a hint to the compiler to inline my function, I actually need to have a way of for the translation units to know the definition. So it is expected that if I want to give a hint for the compiler to inline my function, that there will be multiple definitions. So it makes sense that when you declare a function inline, you can have multiple definitions. And of course, the thing we should be aware of is that we should never have two definitions that are different. This, if I remember correctly, is not allowed by the C++ standard, but in C it is undefined behavior, so the compilers actually, I think they don't follow the standard here, and if you have multiple definitions, sometimes it will compile and it will work, and maybe you think that one version is being called but another version is being called, so beware of that. And there are some places where inline is implied, meaning you don't need to explicitly write inline. The compiler won't care if there are many definitions. For example, if you're writing a class and you define a member function inside the class, then that's implicitly inline. I can remember at least one other place where inline is implied. Can you think of any place where inline is implied? Leave a comment. Oh, and did you know about inline namespaces by world?